Sorry. Yeah. And then we want to spend some time talking about the community workshops that will happen on January 26th. So that's what we're going over this evening. First, we have continued to refine the vision statement, and we do appreciate the comments that have come in from the working group members. One of the biggest changes in the latest version is there is now a preamble that talks about how this is going to be an inwardly focusing general plan, and that, you know, kind of setting the table that it's interesting as we started to write this, it became clear that probably our biggest guiding principle is that we're no longer looking as a community expanding outward, but rather one that's going to be building inward and enhancing within the land area that we have. So it's kind of the biggest guiding principle. And that's now clearly stated at the beginning of the vision statement. It's been posted up to the general plan mind mixer site, so it's available for community members to comment on. I don't believe we've received any comments back yet, but it is available for the community to look at. And like everything in this process, it's subject to revision and update until we ultimately adopt the general plan. So if we get further on in the process and still find new items that we want to integrate in that statement, we certainly can. But for now, we have concluded the process of a draft general plan vision statement.
Paul, you mentioned Mind Mixer, and we did that mailing for the water bills. Has there been an uptick at all in any of that information that you've received?
Nick, are you on the line, and can you speak to whether we've seen any increased traffic on Mind Mixer or the general plan website?
I don't have any numbers available, but I have seen some people, new people commenting on Mind Mixer regarding the plan and getting some input. So there are some new participants, which is good news.
That's great. Thanks, Nick.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we're going to go through the land use map now, and you do have a copy of it on each of your places. You should have this 8.5 by 11. This is important to understand that we're no longer have little boxes around opportunity sites and notes and things like that, because this is now our draft land use map. And that's a pretty significant step, because this map becomes the basis for much of the analysis we'll conduct through the general plan process, from circulation to growth projections and economic development. All of that really starts to build out of the land use map. So this evening is another chance, and certainly not the last chance, to talk about land use, but we are getting fairly focused on this being the plan and getting invested in it. So we do want to confirm that it is reflecting the expectations of the working group. So Nick, I'll take it over. I'll hand it over to you, and you can go from here. Let me know when to advance.
Okay, great. Thank you. So the land use map that we handed out to you this evening is having revisions based on the feedback we received at our last general plan working group meeting on November 3rd. We'll have a series of slides showing you the areas so you can see in detail what areas were updated on the map. It may be helpful for you if you have it, the map that we provided at that November 3rd meeting, and you could have them, you know, side by side, so you can just see visually where the areas changed. But it wasn't a whole lot of changes, but we will show you those areas over the next few minutes. And then there's still some research and follow-up that will need to occur, I believe, just for one opportunity site area. That's the residential area we had identified next to Brand Ranch. So there was a little bit of information we wanted to still kind of look at in terms of some easement area. Maybe Paul, you might be able to explain that a little bit better.
Robert Caddy had pointed out that the land that fronts to Highway 12, it's a quarter section of land, has had its development rights separated. So a process of a conservation easement has been established, and that would mean that land would never be available for development. That's a much more significant change than the adjustments, or than the fact that possibly the Flannery Group owns land or not. We felt like sure, the Flannery Group may own land, but that doesn't mean we're necessarily not going to anticipate development based on our vision. If the development rights have been separated from the land, then it probably makes no sense at all to show it as an urban use because it never can be. So we'll adjust that square of land that's closest to Highway 12, but outside of Brand Ranch. And we'll take that out of a residential designation if we determine it is in fact subject to a conservation easement. Nick, back to you.
Okay, so we'll go to the next slide then. So this just provides an overview of the revised land use map, and we did take off the labels, for the area. So now you would have to just look at the legend to see, the properties that are being designated certain land use designations. So that has been updated to reflect your comments. Next slide. So for the area we had called out as Site 3 in the last meeting, we had made the change where you see agricultural/open space. We had reclassified that property. I believe in the last meeting we had shown that as downtown waterfront, but as we had learned, that is an area that is prone to flooding and kind of being used for that as an open area right now. So we had just changed that designation to agricultural/open space on the land use map. If there's
Not
no,
hearing any comments, so we'll go ahead and proceed to the next one.
and on this map, we are showing an overview of sites 4 through 7. But the main change here is we did designate the 2 large parcels, which we'll show on a map in a few moments, near St. Francis Way and Airport Road as neighborhood residential. And then we are extending neighborhood residential all the way up to the landfill site per your feedback in the last meeting. And we did include industrial limited as an area to separate that residentially designated area in between the industrial general, which is shown with 159.4 acres on the screen. So that change has occurred, and if you have any feedback or comments, we'd love to hear that tonight.
Should I go to the next slide to where we're zoomed in a little bit?
Yeah, let's zoom in. Yeah, I believe that should be
Okay.
showing. Okay. Yeah, so this is the area that we had talked about because at the last meeting, I believe we had neighborhood where it says neighborhood residential, those 2 parcels, we had that designated differently. We had that as an industrial limited. And so we changed that to neighborhood residential per your feedback.
And we're going to take silence as no comment, no objection, and just keep moving. Okay.
And so now you can see again that we just extended that neighborhood residential all the way up to landfill. We have about, I believe about 500 feet in depth for those properties that would be designated in that general plan designation. And again, we created that industrial limited area in between that and the industrial general to help provide a bit of a buffer from a more intensive industrial use with the residential.
I think the only other comment for this area is this is in the sphere of influence, but it's not currently in the city. So this would be an expansion area. And until the property owners come forward and ask for annexation, we would not expect any development to occur in this area. Okay, moving along.
So here we are showing still the industrial limited band along Airport Road, moving in the northwest direction along Airport Road. That's still staying the same as industrial limited. And no other real changes in this area, but we just wanted to show that what's happening here. And then we'll move forward to the next slide where we are showing a commercially designated property on the corner of Church Road and Airport Road. per your suggestions, your comments in last meeting, to have the ability to have a commercial use and maybe some pads with, maybe some retail uses and restaurants that could be occurring in that area. So we did designate that at the corner where you see the 6.085 acres. So that is being added per your feedback in the last meeting.
That provides what, about, you said 6.8 acres, a little bit more at the corner. So that land area would be enough for small scale commercial. It wouldn't be, it could be a grocery store, a smallish grocery store, but you wouldn't expect a shopping center, for instance. So that would provide opportunities for some type of commercial use very close to Trilogy and Homecoming and the future residential.
Right.
We have a talkative group this evening now.
So I'm a little just confused. The blue is the industrial warehouse, and you said it had to be that because of the flight path of the airport, right? So how does that one little corner there, that's not in the flight path of the airport?
I actually don't believe that either of those properties is substantially constrained by the airport overflight. We'll have to confirm that, but I think that the airport safety zones end above the property. So that large, we could do additional land in a commercial designation there. So we identified 6.8 acres. If the working group is interested in a larger site, there is additional land. We were following a parcel line. So it seemed like a logical area, but if the interest is to look at a larger area, the additional blue would probably add another 10 acres or so for a combined 16 or so acres.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. It doesn't make sense, I think, to have a potential commercial use, then an industrial use all backed up to Trilogy. It seems like kind of an odd blend.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I agree. I think if we could have more commercial in that area in the long run is probably a better use of that. And, also that other blue square then just.
The blue square that is,
That's that company. What's the
yeah,
name of, I can't remember the name of it. It's for sale, but so you're saying we can't change that because it's for sale and it would mess up a potential sale or for the people that own the company
we
now?
could change it. It would be a very inopportune time for the property owners to be thrown into question, because then it would be uncertain how the land could be used, what would be allowed, and this general plan process is still a little ways from being concluded and in place. So we would throw those property owners into limbo right when they're trying to sell. And
Right,
that-
okay, that's how I remember you saying. Okay,
Yeah.
I understand. Okay.
Okay, so anybody have any thoughts otherwise? Emmett?
I could see taking that oddly shaped, kind of an odd rectangle, where I think that's where a storage facility is now.
I believe that was Lisa's
Mhm.
recommendation.
Yeah.
And Tom
That,
was
and then
supportive.
that little dog leg piece on the,
Yeah,
I
that's that
guess the
corner where there's a
right-hand
sign
side.
that says. it's all for
Yeah.
sale.
Mhm.
I thought it said commercial when
I think it
drove by
did at
It's
one
the company
time.
called Tri Commercial.
Mhm.
That's why I saw
Yeah.
the name.
I think at
commercial on
one
there.
time it did say
It probably
commercial
did,
property.
Yeah.
So the proposal, I believe, is that the neighborhood services district would be expanded to take in the blue right next to it that fronts to church.
Mhm.
Yes.
Make sense? All right, I'm seeing a lot of heads nodding, so that's the direction. We'll make that adjustment.
And if you wanted to even expand that a little more, you could take that little rectangle dog leg piece.
We do start approaching the airport overflow at
Okay.
that point. So
Okay.
we'll be looking at that and confirming
Mhm.
how the airport overflight relates to those properties. Okay. All right, Nick, I'm going to move on.
Okay, sounds good.
This is an interesting area that we have not yet discussed. I believe that it's Caddy Road and that property, Caddy Lane. That property is currently designated for industrial limited. It's outside of the city, it's outside of the sphere of influence. I'm not sure why the decision was made to apply that designation. But that said, since I'm sure it was with the interest and support of the Caddy family, I'm not sure that there's any reason to eliminate it. We haven't discussed this and we haven't been showing this industrial limited on the map, but staff's recommendation would be that unless there's a compelling reason to take it off, that the industrial limited designation is there. We revalidate it through the general plan, and if at that point in the future, the owners wish to come into the city, then they've already got a conforming general plan designation. It would have been analyzed in an environmental document. That would make it relatively easy to consider for annexation. So unless there's a compelling reason, we're suggesting just leave it. And of course, nothing will happen until the sphere of influence is changed and the land is annexed. But until that point, it doesn't seem to do any harm for the city to designate it industrial. Does that make sense? The other thing that honestly, we don't know how to interpret, the current general plan applies an AG or ag designation in a couple of locations, but it doesn't define the extent of those ag areas. So it's just a floating AG designation. We don't know how far it was intended to go. In this case, we don't think it's adding any value because we as a city are not going to be annexing land for the purpose of keeping it in agriculture, right? We don't currently control the land. It's controlled by the county. The county is the land use authority. So we're just not really seeing a compelling reason to include an agricultural designation simply outside of the city. So our recommendation would be here, and the other location is up north of the airport. We think we can just drop those off, and then you would see a land use map that's reflected on the 8.5 by 11 sheet in front of you. There just wouldn't be an agricultural designation placed outside of the city limits. Does that make sense? And with that, we have the direction on the land use map. And 6 o'clock is looking like it's going to be really easy at this point.
But Paul, I do have a question about that piece of property that you're just talking about, the existing agriculture designation. On the maps from last time, it was a whole part. On the map this time, you have a sphere of influence that's a little rectangle close to Church Road there. What caused that to happen? Because I don't remember anything about that.
Are you asking about the rectangle?
Yes.
The rectangle is the city's sphere of influence.
Okay.
That's the existing city sphere of influence.
That's basically where it ends, is what you're saying.
It's that land is in the sphere of influence, but not inside the city.
It's not in the city limits.
Yeah,
Okay.
just like the other blocks are down along the river
Mhm.
that includes Sandy Beach Regional Park. That's in the sphere, but not in the city. And then again, that industrial area, residential and industrial area over on Airport is the third area that's not in the sphere of influence. And Nick, I just recognized a problem that we have. We've used the same color boundary on the area around Brand Ranch that we've used for the sphere of influence. So we can't do that because that seems to imply that land is in the sphere of influence. So we have to correct that.
Okay,
Make sense?
yeah,
Okay. Then in all other cases, that blue outlined area is just sphere of influence.
yeah, we had
Other-
looked at designating that in the last meeting as neighborhood services mixed use, but then I believe the discussion when we went through it was that it didn't make sense, to go forward with that.
Partly because of the Flannery ownership, partly because of natural gas constraints. So. yeah. Any other questions, comments, thoughts on the land use map? Okay, then we'll be doing a little bit of cleaning up, but this will now be posted to the website as the draft land use plan. And if anything gets public comments going, it's sticking a map out there. It always gets people's attention. So maybe we'll see a little uptick in interest. The next item we wanted to talk about is the upcoming community workshops. We're going to be going out to the community to hopefully get more and deeper participation on land use, circulation, and economic development. We have settled in on 2 meetings, both to be held on Thursday, January 26th. And an afternoon meeting would be held at the Trilogy Clubhouse. After talking with our city clerk, who's really got, has a good understanding of kind of community interests and how to get them involved, and working with the Trilogy folks, who we really understand that afternoon meetings out there are our best shot. It's, after the morning activities, before dinner, and that's when we're most likely to get Trilogy Liberty residents to come out and join us. So we'll be out there in the afternoon, we think 1:30 to 4, but we're still fine tuning that. We expect to be at DH White in the evening, so that will be an opportunity for folks who work, who couldn't participate in a daytime meeting, and also bringing it to a location that's more in the central part of town. This will be the same meeting, just run twice. Our expectation is we're going to have a brief 2.5-hour lecture on land use principles so that we can make sure everybody's really sharp. We anticipate having a fairly brief overview of what is a general plan, why are we there, and what are we doing, keeping our comments relatively short. And then we'll have 3 or possibly 4 stations set up in the room, and each station will be staffed by a couple of people who will then have maps and a set of questions that they'll run the group through. So we'll start out the meeting, we'll break up the participants into 3 or 4 groups, send a group to each table, run for about 25 minutes at that table, and then just ask everybody to get up and shift to the next table. So everybody will go through each of the stations and hear the same brief presentation, and then the facilitators at each table will be soliciting input and taking all of that down. This will be supported by maps so people can draw on them and identify, in the case of parks, what's your favorite park and what do you like about it? And where do you think we have a gap? And pedestrian and bicycles, where do you think we need a connection? So we can get that stuff taken down graphically and really understand and have a record. Right now, we're definitely committed to land use, circulation, and economic development. We may also do parks and recreation if we feel like we're ready for that. It's another subject that's really near and dear to the hearts of the community. So those are ones we really like to get community input on. We'll get back together for a brief summary from the facilitators about the biggest themes that they heard, but that roundup will be about 15 minutes. And that will be the event. We anticipate it's going to take a couple of hours, maybe 2.5 hours to get through the whole program. But if we can turn out 30 or 40 people at these workshops, which is really our minimum goal, our hope, then we can get some really good input. So.
Did you have an approximate time for the DH White?
Yeah, it is 6 to 8:30.
16:30.
So you said that you're working on outreach. So does any of that include mailers? Because the water bill gets sent out around the 10th of January, and have a mailer in there would be good with just the meeting information.
Yeah, we did do a water bill mailer. It seemed to be really well received because it gets out to everybody. We can look at having another mailer produced. Right now we're working on the flyer for the event. So we're in good shape in order to, I think, make that mailing. I'll have to check in with staff about what the deadlines are to get into it, but I think we're in good shape if we wanted to do that.
Paul, Judith has a question.
I'm sorry not to be there. I have COVID, so I thought you'd
Oh,
appreciate my not being there. Would it be helpful for us to be at any of these community meetings?
I think it would be great. We did have a little bit of sensitivity that we wanted some separation between the working group and the general public, but at this point, I think it would be really great. Particularly because you get to hear firsthand what the community is saying. And I think that would be really informative for the working group members. So very welcome and encouraged to participate.
Okay,
Any questions or thoughts about our plan for outreach to the
You know,
community?
in Trilogy, in the big clubhouse, they have posters up there of upcoming events and things like that. So if we could do a poster and have it in there, I think that would help a lot also.
Okay,
People walking in, look at those a lot. I mean,
yeah.
I
Trilogy
don't,
and
but other people do.
Trilogy in particular has been very interested, asking Pam, well, what's the program? What's the subject? What's the, so we're going to be providing those details in a flyer. How large are the posters for
It's
events?
like a poster board kind of thing.
Yeah, we
11 by
can-
14.
2 foot by 3 foot, maybe?
They're big.
Yeah.
They're
we
big
can-
enough for old people to read.
Really big.
Thank you,
font.
Lisa.
And where do you live, Lisa?
Great. I think it would be pretty easy for us to produce a large format one for posting. Art, I think I saw a hand.
Yeah, just a quick heads up. When you're out there at Trilogy, you might run into questions about parks that are really HOA parks in Trilogy. So you might be prepared to talk about the difference between city parks that we're interested in from a general plan and we're not talking about the HOA parks that are within Trilogy.
So if they ask, why isn't the lawn mowed in the HOA park? We
Yeah.
can say
Yeah,
that.
or why does the water run all day long and it's flooded all the time? Yeah.
Okay, thanks for the heads up.
And
Okay.
back to the posters, can we get some for the downtown storefronts and things?
How
Not that
large,
big.
how large would we want for downtown?
I thought the last ones were too small.
Yeah, it needs to
Tabloid.
be like 11 by 14, I think.
11 by
17
17 tabloid.
Okay, so Nick, we're looking for, Lisa, would it just be a single poster for Trilogy? Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
it's
so we're
okay.
looking to produce, let's say, 3 copies of a poster size 2 by 3, 2 foot by 3 foot poster. And then we'll want to, Art, you're the master of posting downtown. How many flyers can you post in windows downtown?
Usually 20 to 25 is what I start with and walk around, and usually that's what goes into all the storefronts. And everybody's pretty, usually it's 8.5 by 11, but everybody's cooperative. So,
Okay, so
so let's
you
say,
think,
20, yeah, 20 or 25.
you think they would be willing to post a 11 by 17? Would that be problematic?
No, I don't think that'd be too difficult. There might be a little bit of pushback, but most of the places, they have posters for community events already. And they usually just say, yeah, I'll stick it up, or they'll say, go stick it up.
Okay, 25. 25, 11 by 17.
That'll cover the downtown commercial area.
Okay.
One other place we might be able to post it is the library has actually a digital, event board. And I think it's usually just for library events that are going on, but they may be willing to post this there also. So that would be a good way to get it to some of the young families, I think, too.
Okay, Christine, do we know how to reach out to the library? Okay, great.
On the newspaper too.
Yes, the newspaper.
If you can get that flyer into the Trilogy Living magazine, everybody gets that.
Yeah, and you know,
I
it
think
doesn't
that's
actually,
about-
it doesn't actually have to be. in
Yeah,
the
it's just
printed.
it's an
It
insert.
could just be an insert. They just slide.
Yeah,
and
they do that
you can
almost
get
every
3 or 4
month.
of them every month.
How often does that come out?
Once a
Once a
Once
month.
And when does it come out?
I just got it. the other day.
Yeah.
So,
It's gonna be somebody at the
Okay.
HOA in Trilogy.
So we would be looking to get a circulation for the December newsletter,
Uh,
right?
It would be.
No, it would be the the January
We just got
newsletter.
December.
January magazine, so it's not like-
Okay,
It would have to be
yeah.
inserted in there. There's 3,000 homes, so there's.
No, we're doing a lot more water bills than that,
Mm.
so. So Nick, the last suggestion was that we place the flyers inside the Trilogy January edition of the newsletter. And we'll have to make arrangements or find out how that would be accomplished.
It's called Trilogy Living.
Living Magazine.
Living.
Trilogy Living Magazine.
Yeah.
So, okay. Deb Pupping, Pupping. Deb Pupping is the contact for the Trilogy Living Magazine. Okay, great. Thank you.
Run an airplane with a ribbon or.
Skyrider.
Bumper stickers.
Does anybody know if those electronic school signs, if they would post something that is a community event? I don't know.
We are still confirming with the school district and we'll see if they have any natural way to share it out with families. If they're willing to do that.
Just as a former school administrator, I didn't mind putting it on my sign if it was a public event. I refused to put it in the kids' backpacks because it opened me up to a bunch of other
Everybody wants it.
and there's just other legal ramifications to that, but on a sign that was public, I could usually get away with that. So
Okay. Well, we'll ask how the district can assist. Fantastic. Great ideas for getting the word out. What we have found is the most effective way to get people to events is when somebody they know tells them about it and how important it is to come. So if each of you can share and encourage people in your sphere, we may pick up another 15 or 20 participants. So,
Yeah, there's a public comment.
Pam,
Hi, we have reached out to the superintendent and have reached out to Riverview Middle School. And based on the Riverview Middle School principal, she had suggested for us to, one avenue is to talk, there's a elective called AVID and leadership in the middle school level. And so she opened up the gates for us to basically come out and talk to the children, talk to the students about what we're doing and in terms of general plan and economic development, and to pretty much give the flyer around that time to them to take home. And pretty much the students can speak out based on what they've learned from that session to the parents, and then basically talk to the PTA and other shareholder groups in the school level.
fantastic. Pam, once you're back in the office or once you feel well enough, let's follow up on how that would be accomplished, the specific program and who we contact at the school.
Okay, will do.
Ben? You're up.
Hey, Paul, I just, back to that land use map. Is that the first time that's been, the updated land use map has been shown to the public?
It is the first time it will be pushed out broadly. It's been evolving and available through packets, but one would have to know to look for it. Now we're trying to push it more broadly into the community.
So it'll be online or something?
Yes,
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
You know, I have a question about the land use map. Can we just look at it one more time? I just had a question about that one blue square that's industrial warehouse that business is on right now. So why is it industrial warehouse? Why wouldn't it be industrial like the other, like industrial general? Why would you want to leave that as warehouse? Just curious.
We haven't given a lot of thought to it. I think the use itself is more maybe in appearance similar to industrial warehouse. We're not sure if it's important for the use. We can, is the request that staff look at that designation and determine whether it's appropriate, or maybe we want to designate it to a different type of industrial?
That's what I was wondering, just why would you limit it to warehouse?
Next, so the direction that we just received is to take a look at the industrial warehouse designation in the general plan and try to determine, is there something that specifically makes that designation more appropriate for this site? So how about you and I follow up on that?
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
Is it proximity to the housing? Is that part of the reasoning?
Industrial warehouse may be the lowest intensity industrial. So in which case it would be the most appropriate.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
okay.
can tell you, I have received inquiries about that property for everything up to and including a hydrogen production and storage facility, to which I said, I don't think that's really appropriate with residential on 4 sides. So,
Fertilizer warehouse.
yeah. If that were not designated industrial now and were not developed, we absolutely would not place the industrial there. So we're dealing with designations that are, reflect decisions years ago.
Okay, thank you.
So, Ben,
Yeah, so my comment on that little piece would be, make the most sense if we were starting over, that would be residential. But that's not my big concern. Could I see the map one more time, the overall map? Okay. Yeah, I'll have to take a closer look at that. That's great. Interesting. Thank you.
great, and for Vin or any other community members, this of course is still fluid and still developing and evolving. If issues are identified that we want to make adjustments, absolutely. We'd like to know that this is a pretty good starting point, but it's not locked down by any means.
Well, and Paul, I don't know why you wouldn't take that agricultural space, at least put it in the sphere of influence, the agricultural space that you showed earlier that was south of Highway 12 next to the Caddy Lane light industrial or whatever that is, because you've been locked in by Flanagan. And from what we understand, that's just going to remain as it is. He's giving everybody a life estate that he's buying that property from. So nobody's, that's for free. They can farm, they can, harvest their crops, they can do whatever they want to with the property. They don't have to leave until the person that signed the life estate passes away. So kind of interesting. You are locked in though.
Yes, we are.
Just something to think about.
Okay. Any other
Thank you.
comments from the working group on either the map, the land uses, or the upcoming workshops? Great. I think we have our marching orders primarily about ways to help to get more residents participating in the workshops. Great input. We'll be following up on that. Chair, that concludes our presentation. Let me just talk about next steps for a second. We are working on the draft elements. So what you're going to get on the parks and recreation, what it is and what it isn't, It will still very much be a preliminary draft. It's going to serve two functions. One, you can see generally the way we're approaching elements, how we're laying out the information, and really a somewhat briefer format than the current general plan. We're going to attempt to begin to format it so you'll get a sense of what it's going to look like. In both cases, still very much a draft. We're not looking for you to edit the words yet, because we want to get something out to you. But before we get to that stage, we want to go back to the Park and Rec Commission. And then, all of these elements will come back for a real close scrub by the working group. But that's not what we're looking for now. We're looking for general thoughts on the approach, the presentation of information, the format. Is it looking like what you're expecting? So we hope to get that out by the end of next week. We are going to be spending a lot of time getting ready for the workshops. Baron Piers will be coming to the January 26th workshop to talk about circulation. We'll have Nick and myself, or our team, will be there for land use, and then Pam and Don will be there for economic development. Just as an aside, we had a second meeting with local developers today on economic development. So there's a lot of interest in making things happen in Rio Vista, and we're trying to figure out what those steps are to get progress going. We get that we've been talking about stuff for years and years, and we want to see some results. And so that's what we're going to try to establish through the general plan, is tangible strategies, tangible actions to get some results. Next general plan working group is February 2nd. So by then we will have been through our January 26th workshop, and we'll look forward to seeing you next year. Chair, that
Does
covers
anybody
what
have any other
have.
questions or comments before we? Okay. With that being said, I'd like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, or however you spend your holidays. Just make sure it's safe and you're healthy. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.